Ferns are one of my favorite houseplants. I absolutely love them. They come in different sizes, they come in different textures, and some even have a bit of color or variegation in them. There's nothing that can go wrong when it comes to these beautiful plants because they can instantly brighten up your home, giving that tropical vibe. Needless to say, I have quite a few of them in my home, and for today's video, I am going to be talking about my oldest and tallest fern, the Monarch Fern. Hello everyone, my name is Varsha and welcome to my channel Planting Passion. The Monarch Fern belongs to the Polypodiaceae family. You can find this fern growing usually in the tropics as well as the subtropics. And scientifically, this plant is called Phymatosorus Scolopendria, but fortunately, there are a lot of other regular names like the breadfruit fern, musk fern, and some very interesting names like the male-scented fern. And this is because apparently, when you crush the fronds, it gives out an aroma which is quite similar to male. It is also called the serpent fern, and that is because when you look at the rhizome, which is basically the stem of the plant, it has these tiny hair-like structures called scale, which gives a resemblance of a serpent. Lastly, this plant is also called the wart fern, and this is because when you look at the underside of the frond, you will notice these orange-brown structures called sori, and these contain the sporangia which is required for reproduction. The sora gives a bump-like appearance on the upper side of the frond, and this sort of resembles wart, and that is why it's also called the wart fern. Now, in the wild, this fern is usually lithophytic and epiphytic, which basically means that this plant or fern, you can find this growing on rocks or in the crevices of rocks as well as on other plants. Whereas in my home, I have this plant growing in a plastic container. Now, when you look at the appearance of this plant and when you talk about the physical characteristics of this plant, you'll notice that this plant has really nice height and volume as well. And that is what drew me closer to this plant in the nursery. I fell in love with the height of this plant. So this plant can grow up to 3 to 4 feet tall. The fronds color is usually green, and when you look at the newer fronds, it has a slightly lighter shade of green and also a glossy appearance. The mature fronds have the so-called sori, or these orange-brown structures, which is on the underside, and the sori is also present in the newer fronds, but that is not visible to us because it's covered by a protective layer or protective tissue. The midrib on the frond is elevated on both the sides, and you'll also notice that the fronds are deeply lobed, which basically means that there are these distant projections which come out from the midrib, and each of these have their own vein. So in the wild, given the right conditions, you can have 6 or more lateral lobes. And what you'll also notice that the size of each frond varies, and the stipe in this plant is also quite long, and apparently it can grow up to 40 centimeters in length, provided the growth conditions are right. Lastly, when you look at the rhizomes or the stem of the plant, you'll notice that they are again green in color. It's quite thick, and as I mentioned earlier, it has these tiny hair-like structures called scales on them. The rhizomes usually crawl over the medium that they are growing on. So these are some of the basic characteristics or visual characteristics or physical characteristics to say about the monarch fern or the wart fern. The monarch fern is a plant that can grow outdoors as well as indoors. In my home, I have this plant growing in a spot where it receives constant ambient light throughout the day. In a year, for about 2 to 3 months, I do receive early morning sun rays on my plants, and the monarch fern seems to really like that extra light. But throughout the year, as I said, it receives good amount of bright light. Unlike the Boston fern and the maidenhair fern, my experience with this fern is that it can tolerate periods of drought, and that's exactly what I've observed with this plant. And there have been days where I haven't watered this plant for up to 4 to 5 days, but yes, there have been signs of stress. So when you don't water your plant, and when you don't water your monarch fern, to be more specific, you will notice that the tips of the frond, they start turning brown. And when you overwater your fern, the plant again goes into stress and starts yellowing its leaves. So you need to strike the right balance when it comes to your watering schedule, keeping the light as well as the climatic condition of your environment. And what I mean by that is, if you live in a city where the temperature is quite warm, obviously you will have to water your plant on a regular basis. And if you live in a city where the temperatures are quite low, again, then you'll have to cut down on your watering. On the days when I water this plant, I usually start off by first washing the fronds. And this is because A, all the debris and dust which gets accumulated on the plant gets washed away. And B, if there are any pests on the plant, that also gets washed off in the process. So once I'm done with washing the fronds, only then do I water this plant thoroughly. Whenever I water this plant, I make sure that I allow the water to drain out completely before I bring it back to its original spot. And this is because I don't want any water to be accumulated or stagnated in the pot. So in order to ensure that the water drains out properly, you have to have a soil mixture which is well draining. My soil mixture has a combination of a bit of garden soil, it has a bit of vermicompost, it has perlite and sand. And so far the plant hasn't complained about the medium that it is growing in. As for the humidity requirements of this plant, the monarch fern is a plant that can adapt to your home's humidity levels. So in my home, I have not had any problems with the humidity requirement for this plant. But I do have a habit of I do have a habit of misting this plant on a regular basis every day. And if you live in a city where the humidity levels are really low, then there are many ways by which you can increase the humidity level. One is you can mist your plant probably in the morning or also somewhere around late afternoon. You can also group your plants together. You can also place your plant on a pebble tray, and for that you would require a tray. You can add pebbles on that. You need to add some water to it and make sure that the pebbles don't get completely covered or submerged underwater. So there has to be that distance. You need to place your plant or the pot on the pebbles and make sure again that the base of the pot does not touch the water. Lastly, you can also think about investing in a humidifier to increase the humidity level for your plants. Now, I have read a lot of articles as well as I have watched a lot of videos by other YouTubers suggesting that ferns do not like a lot of fertilizer. So you should fertilize your ferns once in 3 months. And of course, there is another section, who have a different opinion, saying that, it's a good practice to fertilize your fern every month. Now, for my Monarch Fern, I have been fertilizing it every month, and there are two main reasons for that. And this is just my practice, so I'm just going to first tell you why I do it. The first reason is, irrespective of the season, I've always had new growth on this plant. And the second reason is, since I water this plant frequently, the nutrients get leached out of the pot. So therefore, it's very important that you, replace the lost nutrients. So this is just my practice, and my Monarch Fern has been doing really well so far. My go-to fertilizer for the Monarch Fern is Vermicompost, and this is mainly because it's very easily available and accessible for me. I fertilize this plant with Vermicompost every month, irrespective of the season, and so far the Monarch Fern has been doing really well. The Monarch Fern is quite resistant when it comes to pest attack, but I have found a few mealybugs now and then, and that's probably because I have this plant grouped with a lot of other plants. Now, what I've seen is that the mealybugs always attack the younger or the newer fronds, and I've always found them on the underside of the frond. My way of removing or treating the mealybug is taking a wet cloth and immediately wiping the leaves and removing the mealybug. If the infestation is high, then it's a good practice to isolate your plant, and then you can treat it with a mild soap solution. If that doesn't work, then you can always try using neem oil treatment. So what I do with this plant is, since I wash the leaves properly every time whenever I water these plants, my experience with this is that the pest attack has been really less. So this is something that you can also try doing in your home for your plants as well as for your ferns. The Monarch Fern can be easily propagated. You can do it by spores, or you can do it by root division or a rhizome cutting. Now, the latter method is the most easiest way of propagating this plant, and to do that you will have to first gently remove the plant from its pot. You need to divide it, and then you need to make cuts on the rhizome. But before you do that, you have to ensure that at least one frond has to be on the rhizome. You can place all these individual cuttings in soil, and there you go, you will have a new Monarch Fern. The Monarch Fern, from what I've read, is a plant that's non-toxic, and it has a lot of medicinal uses. This plant is used for treating wounds, boils, diarrhea, filariasis in infants in different regions of the world. I haven't tried using this plant for treating any of these illnesses, but I'll mention a couple of other illnesses which I read online so that you can have an idea about what this plant is basically used for. All in all, I think the Monarch Fern is a very beautiful plant. It has, like I said, a lot of medicinal uses. It's non-toxic. It's safe to have in your home, especially when you have children as well as pets in your home. This plant is very easy to care for. It's a low maintenance plant and an absolute joy to have in your home. With this, we've come to the end of this video. If you have liked this video, please click on the like button. Also click on the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to my channel. You can also hit the bell icon to get notifications on new plant videos. Thank you so much for staying with me and watching my video. I hope to see you in my next plant video.